Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Weston Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field, coming off of the bye week, Wes. How was your time off?
Not long enough. Not enough true. Of it. But man, I always say I hate the bye week. I always say this. Hate the bye week. Because you start to remember what it's like to live a normal life again.
Yeah, and then it changes right back.
And it goes right back when you have a responsibility at 9 a.m. on Monday. No, it was great. It was a great week. I got to spend some time with the kiddo. Got to catch up on Peaky Blinders. I finished an entire season of Peaky Blinders.
Good work.
Watched a little bit of football. Didn't do anything too extravagant, but you know what I did do? I got my life in order. And I was really excited about that.
Well, that's always helpful for the second half of the season. So I managed to take a trip back home. I went to visited my old high school.
Oh, yeah. How are the children?
I actually didn't even see my children.
Oh, no, I meant the Platteville children.
Oh, the Platteville children.
I hope your children are doing well, though.
Yeah, my children are doing just fine. The Platteville children are they're in good shape. They were excited to hear. I was one of dozens of presenters at Career Day.
Nice.
Old high school. So it was a big crowd of us. But I was one of the few who was actually a Platteville High School graduate. So that sort of like got their attention, like, oh, you actually went to school here kind of thing. So
it's pretty nifty, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I went back and spoke at Bayport once. I asked to never do it again. I love Bayport, but I'm never speaking again.
Well, this one was a first for me. We'll see if they invite me back. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, so it's time to talk about the state of the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
6-3. And I think the hope here, we'll talk about things kind of on both sides of the ball, but I think the biggest thing that both sides of the ball for the Packers are looking for, offensive and defensively, is one, to get back to full health or as close as possible to full health, particularly with regard to some very key players, but then also to find a way to play that complete game, that full four-quarter performance that becomes something you can hang your hat on, that thing that your side of the ball can build on as we get closer to the stretch run of the season here. It kind of seems like in different ways, both sides of the ball for the Packers are still looking for that.
The nice thing about the bye week is you get a chance to sort of take stock of everything. And I know I was hitting everyone really hard with the fact that the Packers are 6-3 right now through 9 games as opposed to 3-6 last year and already had the bye week behind them. And then ended up having to play, I think maybe it was 13 straight games to finish out the season and get on that run that they did. They're so much better positioned this year. But another thing I've been kind of drilling home with people, and something I truly believe is, once you kind of get away from the Detroit loss a little bit, you start to realize, at least in my own opinion, how close this Packers team is. They're close. I think offensively, you look at what they were able to do, Michael, and the fact that they rank top 10, top 5 in so many offensive categories, despite not having Jordan Love for 3 games, despite not being able to, get over this penalty thing and having these ebbs and flows to that, some drop passes, some miscommunication, and they're still producing at that level of efficiency. The amount of people that have gotten involved in this thing, the fact that there was that little bit of a situation with Romeo Doubs, but it seems like everybody has moved past that. There's so much to like offensively at what Green Bay is doing, and defensively, I think is the area where they really, as important as the Jordan Love situation is and getting him healthy with this knee and all these other things that he's dealt with, now more recently the groin, defensively, if you can get Evan Williams back, if you can get Jair Alexander back, if you can get some of these stalwarts now on your defensive side of the ball that have really emerged in the first half of the season, again, there's a lot of improvement that has to happen, but considering where Green Bay was and how daunting it looked at being 3-6 last year, I think 6-3 is a massive opportunity for this football team. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think the Packers are close. And let's stay on the defensive side of the ball for a minute, because while I think the story of the first half of the season, if you want to call it that, slightly more than half, has been the turnovers on defense, the takeaways, and the aggressiveness with which they have played. I think this is a defense, as you say, that is close in the sense that it's right there to where you don't feel like you have to go into a game counting on getting takeaways to be successful on defense. I think they're getting closer to the point. Of course, you want them. They're the game-changing types of plays. But I think this defense is getting closer to where it doesn't have to rely on them. I think health will have a lot to do with that. But the big question is, can the pass rush establish a certain level of play and a certain consistency that that can be relied upon? And since our last show, the Packers traded Preston Smith to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 7th-round draft pick. Found out then the next day that Preston Smith had actually requested the trade. Didn't feel like he was fitting in with the transition from the 3-4 front to the 4-3. He's a 10-year vet. He's played his whole career as an edge rusher in a 3-4. So the Packers accommodated that. They got a 7th-round draft pick in return. What that does is, of course, open a tremendous window of opportunity, not only for guys who have already been playing regularly in Kingsley Enagbari and Lucas Van Ness behind Rashawn Gary, who's certainly the leader of that group now and has been for a while along with Preston, but also a window of opportunity for younger guys who have either barely played or haven't played. And of course, I'm talking about Aaron Mosby and Brenton Cox Jr. So the Packers didn't go out and add an edge rusher at the deadline. They traded one because he requested it. It's interesting to me because the more I thought about this trade and its ramifications moving on from Preston Smith and everything over the bye week, it took me back to last season and to a lot of the things that Brian Gutekunst said after the season was over, in that from a personnel side of things, if the Packers feel they have young players who are capable, then the answer is they have to let them play. And they have to let them grow and develop by playing. There's a lot to be said for watching the veterans do it, for watching the Preston Smiths and the Rashawn Garys of the world do it. But if these guys are going to become the players that the personnel department believes they have and believes they can become, then they have to play. And this is opening that window of opportunity for guys like Mosby and Cox to play.
It's an astute point, and I will dive into that fully here in one moment. But before I do so, I just need to say one last word here about Preston Smith.
Sure.
Because in a day and age where guys raise hell, and if they don't like something, they make it known in the media, they make it known in the public, they take it out in channels in which should not be explored. Preston Smith very quietly said to the Green Bay Packers, his representation of the Packers, hey, you know what? I'm not fitting in. Nobody knew about that.
Yep.
The guys in the locker room said, no, I was not, talking to basically all these edge rushers saying, no, he never made that known. That was something the personnel department dealt with, something Brian Gutekunst dealt with, something Preston Smith dealt with. If he got traded, great. If he doesn't, no one would have ever even knew that situation was broached. My hat goes off to Preston Smith. 5.5 years here. He finishes his time here 6th all-time in sacks since 1982. And the fact that this guy gave so much to this team and had such an impact on all these young pass rushers and still went about his business the way he did. I've said it before, I'll say it again. He never wore a captain's patch in Green Bay, but I will tell you this, man, in terms of people that absolutely represented what that was, Preston Smith was that person, and everybody in that locker room knew that.
Absolutely. And it's worth saying, and I'm glad you pointed it out, it's worth saying the way this went down, I think not only says a lot about Preston Smith, but it also said a lot about the mutual respect that existed between Preston Smith and this organization. Because if Preston Smith representation goes to the Packers and requests a trade, if the Packers are really upset about it and they don't like it, they could very easily leak it to the media and put Preston Smith on notice, and they make him look like the bad guy for requesting a trade. That didn't happen either. These were two sides that respected each other and understood the situation, and it just very quietly got resolved. And it's refreshing, I guess. I'll just say it that way without getting into other examples.
And Preston's a guy that is going to be 32 years old next week. He still has a lot of football ahead of him. If he feels like this scheme and that system is what's going to help him, propel him to having a longer career, all the credit to him for that. That being said, to your original point, I think this is a massive opportunity. And I think Aaron Mosby is a really interesting guy. I thought that was really cool on his 3rd snap on defense with the Packers. He gets his first sack or shares a sack with Rashawn Gary. The guy I'm excited to see is Brenton Cox Jr. because the thing is the Packers use pretty much all those outside linebackers, or they have, on their special teams units. Lucas Van Ness has a role. Kingsley Enagbari has a role. Certainly Mosby's a four-core guy for them. That being said, Brenton Cox just hasn't been able to get into that game day situation because a lot of that is the special teams. A lot of it, the guys ahead of him on the depth chart on defense are also ahead of him on the depth chart on special teams. This is a massive opportunity for him.
Huge.
This is a guy that has flashed so many times as a former 5-star recruit. Everybody knows his story, knows what he's overcome, knows the professionalism I think he showed in 1.5 years here in Green Bay. Now he potentially has an opportunity to get some snaps on the field because, as you said, Michael, that's where ultimately this learning has to take place. That's where you have to cut your teeth. That's where you have to sink or swim. Now both him and Mosby, you would imagine, will get some of those snaps as well in that rotation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's where it's how the Packers found out last year what they had in the rookie receivers and the rookie tight ends and the young guys that the personnel department believed in and said, hey, all right, like there are going to be some bumps in the road, but you have to let these guys play. You have to let them develop. In this case, guys like Mosby and Cox, undrafted guys, not chosen in the draft. But I think the actions over the trade deadline certainly indicate that the Packers believe in these guys, and they believe that given the opportunity, yes, there are going to be some mistakes. Yes, there may be some setbacks along the way, but given the opportunity to grow and develop, that these are guys who can contribute to a contending team. So we're going to find that out. Shifting back to the offense for a second, and I wrote a story after our first kind of open locker room after the bye on Monday afternoon, and looking into the statistics. And you mentioned offensively how, the Packers have very, very, in some cases high, in other cases very respectable rankings in the offensive categories. There is a bit of a discrepancy, though, in the fact that the Packers rank third in the league in yards per game offensively, but only ninth in the league in points per game.
Yep.
And I think that discrepancy in those two rankings, both of which are plenty solid, of course, but the discrepancy in those two rankings, I think, is an indication of the opportunities that the Packers offense has let get away. And those opportunities have gotten away for the reasons that we've discussed: the drop passes and the penalties and the interceptions, because we talked about, Jordan Love's number being too high there. I think what the Packers feel like offensively, in the sense that I got in the locker room on Monday, talking to Josh Jacobs and talking to Jaden Reed and talking to Josh Myers about what's out there for this offense, not a one of them said anything about the schemes that defenses are playing and what the other team is doing to them. They're all looking at it as, this is right in front of us.
Yeah.
We can fix this. We can perform better. We can put better numbers on the board. This is very much an inward-looking team on offense, saying it's all right in front of them to get it going to where they believe they can go.
The number one thing when I looked at the Packers offense and going back and going through NFL GSIS, 29th in red zone offense right now, 24th in goal-to-go, and 19th in third downs. That's really the only area where Green Bay has kind of come up short is the situational stuff. Obviously, we make a lot out of the penalties, but if you look at the penalties, Green Bay it's not like they're demonstrably higher than the rest of the NFL. It's just that they've had them happen at the wrong time.
Right. It's the when they've occurred. And a lot of them, particularly early in the year, were occurring in the red zone,
Yep.
which is then affecting the point production at the end of the day.
Had an impact, I think, in the Detroit game as well. And being able to sustain drives and, it's one thing to move the football. It's another thing to be able to get the full 6 points out of it. And I feel like that's where Green Bay still has a lot left out there for them. I look at a guy like Romeo Doubs, who has been just an absolute, dream for a quarterback in the red zone. Can they get more opportunities for him? We'll see how everything goes here with Christian Watson in the second half of the season. I think there's a lot out there for him as well. Josh Jacobs has been the third leading rusher in the National Football League. He finally got his first receiving touchdown during the first half of the season. Where can the Packers build this offense out with him as well? And as it sounds like from what Brian Gutekunst said last week, there's a potential that Marshawn Lloyd here will be back shortly as he works his way back from the ankle injury. So Green Bay offensively should have their full allotment of weapons. That's the other thing, and we'll preview the Bears game on Thursday, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but Green Bay's quarterbacks are the least sacked quarterbacks in the National Football League. They've had 12 sacks this season. The Bears have had the most now As far as this individual position, I think maybe Cleveland between the two quarterbacks has more, but nobody's taken more sacks than Caleb Williams. The Packers' ability to keep the pocket clean, whether it's Jordan Love or Malik Willis, giving them a workable pocket and allowing playmakers to make plays, it's all been there for Green Bay. Can you finish these drives? That's where ultimately they need to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's out there. It's out there for the Packers. They know it. They see it. But as Josh Myers said, when he was then asked as a follow-up, okay, what does it take to get there? What does it take to really put yourself up there as one of the best offenses in the league? And he said it takes an intentionality every day to what you do and to how you go about your work. And I think that's the inward-looking message is that that's the approach. And we'll see. I mean, in a sense, we won't see because we don't get to watch practice, but maybe we'll hear and perhaps see in the results of some of the things that Matt LaFleur talked about in terms of changing the structure of practice a little bit, emphasizing certain things over others. If that ends up, perhaps changing the results a little bit for the better, because and I say all that going back to your original point very early in the show, talking about both sides of the ball, the Packers are close. Like they are close. They are not far away from where they need to be and where they believe they should be, but they haven't gotten there.
And you're never going to play a perfect game. There's going to be things that Green Bay did really well in the first half of the season that they maybe won't do as well in the second half, because that's just how this game is played and the variables that are in play with it. But that being said, there's things that happen during the first half of the season that you just don't expect to happen over the course of an entire year. The receiver drops, right? I mean, there's guys in that equation that you expect they're going to be able to make those plays here going forward.
Yeah, guys who have been more reliable than they've shown in some of their worst moments.
And the other thing is, too, and I'll close on this, I wish people, maybe sometimes they get to see these locker room interviews, maybe they don't, if you're on Packers.com or some of the local television stations, but I wish everybody could watch the 6-10 minutes, whatever it was that Sean Ryan talked after the game against Detroit. Because when you talk about when fans get so upset and we see things in Insider Inbox and they don't like this, or why isn't this being fixed? How come they haven't gotten better in this area? If you would have listened to Sean Ryan after that game discussing his false start that ultimately pushed the Packers back from a 3rd and 3 to a 3rd and 8, and then they end up having, I think they punted on that one then.
Yes.
How seriously these guys take this and how much that bothered Sean afterwards. I'm sure it's something that still that he was thinking about going into the bye week. These guys want to get it right. And they want to get things fixed. And they're not going to make excuses when you don't have Josh Myers and the communication changes on the offensive line and guys are trying to do different positions that they haven't normally played. They won't use those excuses. But at the same time, when you hear them lament their errors, hearing them for that, understanding the emphasis and the intentionality, to use that phrase again, these guys take this so serious.
Yeah.
And they want to come through for your team.
Yeah, and we'll see when the team gets back on the practice field on Wednesday. We'll see where things are health-wise with Jordan Love and with Josh Myers at center with the wrist injury, and as you mentioned on defense with Jair Alexander and Evan Williams, and hopefully the health report sort of turns in a more positive direction here as the Packers hit the second half of the season. So I'll take care of a little bit of sponsor business here, Wes. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. All right, well, we sort of covered the state of the Packers at 6-3, so let's shift gears into the state of the NFC North, because the Detroit Lions are 8-1, the Minnesota Vikings right behind at 7-2, the Packers right behind them at 6-3, and the Chicago Bears, this week's opponent for Green Bay, now 4-5. And as we had talked about, Wes, they lose the game on the Hail Mary in Washington, and suddenly everything is going haywire with their season. They've lost two more in a row since then. They've now fired their offense coordinator, turned over the offense to the passing game coordinator, Thomas Brown. So Shane Waldron is out. Thomas Brown is in, trying to get the number 1 overall draft pick, Caleb Williams, going. But there's a lot of turmoil in Chicago right now. And even, when the home fans are chanting for the head coach to be fired after a loss to the New England Patriots over the weekend, that's just that's a lot to deal with for the Packers' neighbors to the south.
They sure are. But the Green Bay Packers, they're still looking for that first NFC North win too.
Very true.
So kind of like the situation I look at with what happened to Jacksonville, this is another opponent you're not going to be able to just look past. You have to be able to go out there and set the tone. Matt LaFleur has yet to lose to the Chicago Bears as the head coach. Unfortunately, Preston Smith is no longer here. He had never lost at all at any interval of his career to the Chicago Bears, and unfortunately, I don't think we'll play them again this season. But all that being said, here's the thing that I look at this as. Josh Jacobs said at his locker, I think it was after the Houston game, how football is a crazy game because you can almost see the momentum. You can feel it more than anything else. Doesn't matter what the box score says, doesn't matter what the statistics say. It's all momentum in that very moment. And it feels like the air got let out of the balloon for them in Washington.
Yep.
With that loss to Washington.
They were 4-2 on the verge of going to 5-2 and beating one of the up-and-coming teams in the league and the Washington Commanders. And it was like the balloon popped on that one play.
And the craziest thing of all, Mike, I know you had to read my inbox when I was going off about this. 23 straight drives now without a touchdown. But this stat about how Caleb Williams has neither a touchdown nor an interception in these last 3 games, it is mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
One way or the other.
Right.
Like just that it goes 3 straight games with none of those scoring statistics. And that being said, I mean, the other thing I look at for as much flack as Williams got, as much as the Bears offensive line got in that game against New England, the Patriots are a team that really have struggled to protect their quarterback, and the Bears got 1 sack on Drake May. So, I mean, there's a lot of things happening in that universe right now for Chicago, and none of it looks good.
Well, we'll talk more about this on Thursday as we more directly preview the game, but it's really interesting from a preparation standpoint because it's not as though the Bears can completely, overhaul the playbook because they fired their offensive coordinator and turned it over to somebody else. But that being said, you kind of have to be prepared maybe for some unscouted looks and for, some change-ups and things like that, some out-of-character stuff maybe in the offense because the new offensive coordinator is going to be looking for some kind of a jump start, something that's going to energize the offense and get them going. So on the Packers side, from a preparation standpoint, it's not as easy necessarily as saying, oh, look, the Patriots got like 9 sacks of Caleb Williams and, we can sort of, look at what they did and see how that fits what we do, and that's going to be the plan. When there's changes like this going on, you can't just make assumptions like that. That being said, you don't want to be chasing ghosts and trying to guess or figure out what they're going to do. But it becomes a very different kind of week from a preparation standpoint. And that being said, this Bears defense is no picnic. It's not. No. They didn't have a great game certainly in Arizona, but in Washington and against the Patriots, the Bears defense played pretty darn well.
Yeah, I mean, it's
a solid unit.
It's a unit that if you allow, it's the way it's been with Matt Eberflus over. They're going to play you competitively.
Yeah.
It's just been a matter of what's going on with their offense and are they basically able to generate points and yards and production, and they were not able to do that against New England. Now, all that being said, what's funny to me in these instances is there's nothing more dangerous than a team or a person with nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And we're entering those waters now for the Bears because if this thing continues to turn, there won't be a year 4 for Eberflus. There's going to be another changeover again, and they're going to try to find another head coaching staff that can work with Caleb Williams to try to build him up the quarterback they feel he can be.
Yep.
But all that being said is that's stuff for down the line. What the Packers have to worry about is this game at Soldier Field. And again, needing to pick up not only wins in this division, but wins in this conference. And Green Bay's schedule, as far as wins and losses are concerned, looks favorable during the second half. But you look at a San Francisco team that now has Christian McCaffrey back. You look at, how the Miami Dolphins looked with Tua and the beating that they put down on the Rams. And certainly you're going to have another matchup with Detroit. This is going to be a challenge. And I feel like moments like this, going down to Soldier Field, this is where you can own it and sort of set your tone and build yourself up during this final stretch, much like they were able to do last year during that big run they got on.
Well, at the top of the NFC North, if you had told me, Wes, going into the bye weekend, that the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings were going to combine to throw 8 interceptions on Sunday and that they were both going to win, I was going to, say, huh? Like, what are you talking? Well, that's exactly what happened. Now, granted, one of Jared Goff's 5 interceptions was a Hail Mary at the end of the first half, sort of meaningless in that respect. But still, even if you take that one away, Jared Goff threw 4 other interceptions. Sam Darnold threw 3 for Minnesota. The Vikings didn't even get a touchdown in Jacksonville. But the defensive performances of both of those teams, what the Vikings did, now they were facing Mac Jones, the backup quarterback for Jacksonville. It wasn't Trevor Lawrence. But Minnesota's defense, other than one drive in the game where Mac Jones got a touchdown, they just completely shut the Jaguars down. And the Detroit Lions, after some real shaky moments in the first half and falling behind by 16 points, they pitched a second-half shutout on the road at Houston against a first-place team and a quarterback in C.J. Stroud who looked like he was getting back to being that, NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year that he was last year. And Detroit's defense just completely locked it down with the help of one very, very poorly thrown pass that should have been a 50-yard touchdown that turned into an interception for Stroud when he had a absolute layup for a bomb for a touchdown and threw a terrible ball. And that really ended up being the difference in the game because the Lions are not going to be able to overcome one more touchdown by the Texans, and Texans had their opportunity. That being said, though, the top of this NFC North, 8-1, 7-2, 6-3. The numbers are right there. It's going to be quite the fight. But the Detroit Lions are the team that remains in control of this division.
Yeah, and if you want a quick synopsis of how you managed to lose a game in which you led 23-7 at halftime, this is what'll suit you. 0 net yards, interception, 1 net yard, punt, 40 net yards, interception, 6 net yards, punt. 1 net yard, punt, 4 net yards, punt, 30 net yards, missed field goal. That's how you lose a football game. Listen, good teams. That
was just a train wreck of a second half.
Not good.
By the Houston Texans offense. And their defense was trying to keep them in. It's not like the Lions just exploded for a whole bunch of points. The Lions got enough points and got what they needed to make the comeback and win the game. The Texans defense is fighting and trying to hold them in there while the offense was just absolutely self-destructing.
Yeah, I mean, they started the first touchdown of the second half. Lions started at the Houston 44. I mean,
right.
That's just the way it goes. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Good teams find ways to win games, and Detroit is a very good team, and I still think Minnesota's a good team. Sam Darnold, the shine is starting to come off of it a little bit, but
There's a lot of we've obviously talked a lot about the interceptions with Jordan Love. There's a big turnover and interception discussion going on in Minnesota with Sam Darnold right now, and because the last 2 games against the Indianapolis Colts and the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Vikings have won those games because of their defense and not really because of anything Sam Darnold has done.
And I look at it that it's becoming more evident to me as much of a star as Justin Jefferson is, and certainly T.J. Hawkinson now that he's back. But Aaron Jones is something that really does drive that offense.
Yeah, he does.
And they are a different team when he's unavailable, and unfortunately he left for a little bit. I think came back dealing with maybe a rib issue. Aaron Jones might be their most, as much as they were talking about Sam Darnold as a possible MVP candidate, Aaron Jones might be the most important asset to that offense right now with what they're doing. But Darnold has to figure some stuff out because he went from looking like a guy that could really bring them somewhere to, okay, can we win despite this guy? And that's something Minnesota's going to have to figure out. Now, to their credit, they do not take the wins off the board. You are 7-2 right now. You still have a lot of momentum, and they've been in the front before with Kevin O'Connell and then let that thing go. They have to be able to find ways to keep the winnings coming. It just so happened they're playing a Jacksonville team with as many issues that they have, and if not more. And they found a way to eke out that victory.
Yeah, well, it's going to be an entertaining second half of the season, no doubt about it. We will dive more into specifically the Bears and this matchup of the Packers and the Bears at Soldier Field on Sunday. We'll do that on our next show.
I'm surprised you didn't want to talk about Baltimore and Cincinnati.
Oh,
too far away. We can go. It's time to go. Let's talk about the draft. But how about that, huh?
Yeah.
That was a game.
That was a game.
I remarked to...
that was way... I forgot about it because I was back on Thursday night, before all of the craziness and one-score close games on Sunday.
I watched the end of... This shows you the ultimate bye week experience. I watched the end of that game from Schutt's Bar in Swamico.
There you go.
And just seeing the way that both of those teams are thinking down the stretch to end up being a very... probably one of the better Thursday night games ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and to be honest, and not to go off on a complete tangent here, but that's what Thursday night football should be, is division rivals.
Yes.
Because of teams that know each other. You don't need all the extra preparation that goes into playing the more unfamiliar opponents. Thursday night games should be division games, because then that's what makes for much better Thursday night football than when you randomly pair the Los Angeles Rams and the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it's just division games on Thursday night makes for better Thursday night football. I think the NFL needs to understand that. All right,
I'm with you.
Before we go, the home of the 2025 NFL Draft is right here in Green Bay, April 24 through April 26 of 2025. Visit greenbay.com/draft25 for more information. And with that, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team on Packers.com. For Wes, I'm Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.